The first week of Miami Dolphins training camp is in the books, and we've got a lot of stuff to get into. So strap in. We're recapping the week here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, and NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. I just hit record, and we have breaking news within the first minute of the program. Dolphins are signing Mike Hilton, veteran defensive back. First week in camp in the books, getting eyes on guys, letting guys go out there, compete. We've had some movement. So I guess we're going to take the standout performers that we were going to talk about first, and we're going to put it in segment 2, because now we need to talk about segment 1, because it's not just Jack Jones and Kader Kohou, but it's Jack Jones, Mike Hilton, and Kader Kohou. Okay, you're going to get authentic reaction to the Mike Hilton stuff because I'm reacting to this in real time. But this courtesy of Jordan Schultz. Sources: the Dolphins are signing former Bengals nickel corner, highly respected Mike Hilton, highly respected veteran with 13 career interceptions, lands in Miami, who also signed Jack Jones earlier this morning. This comes on the heels of what has been, it was a pretty uneventful first couple of days for the DBs as far as there weren't a lot of explosive plays or guys on islands that weren't following through, but you did have the Jack Jones signing this morning. Kader Kohou's second one-on-one rep of the day was against Tyreek Hill, and Tyreek releases inside of him, and he stacks him, and he gets up to the top of the route, and he gives him the head nod, and he breaks back outside despite taking the inside release. And Kader, trying to stay in the hip pocket, is kind of extended out over the top of it. And when Tyreek breaks, looks like he kind of takes an awkward step. He goes down. He does kind of reach up and grab his right knee. They did tuck him behind a couple of Gatorade barrels there on the practice field. And then he was up and he walked off on his own power. And by the time he got to the second of the 2 practice fields, the limp was largely gone. He was just walking slowly, but he did get taken inside and his day was done. And I don't know if the Mike Hilton news is a bad omen for Kader Kohou, and knowing the fact that I just hit record and now we're reacting to Mike Hilton signing. I am sure that by the time I finish recording and then we transition to publish it, something else is going to come out. So if you get new news, keep an eye out. We'll try to get everything between Touchdown Miami and Locked On Dolphins and A to Z Sports, where I do some written cover. I got you covered. Okay, so stay patient. But let's start with Jack Jones. Jack Jones, and I know what his PFF grade was last year, is a physically talented player. You think about, now, is he the best player that was available? No. He's a little bit feast or famine. He's got his wins and he's got his losses. He's a little bit of a gambler at a time. But he's really twitchy with his feet. Very twitchy with his feet. Very sudden. Good ball skills. Since he got traded to the Raiders from New England, he had 3 pick sixes. He makes some big plays and has really good trigger ability to attack and go get it. He's never played beyond his rookie contract. He got drafted in 2022. There's been an off-the-field journey and some poor decision-making, and obviously the Raiders don't have a talented secondary, but a new regime came in and decided to kind of cut him loose. So there is risk here, but from a feast or famine element of his play, and then also from kind of what the off-field process has looked like for him. But from a raw physical talent perspective, he's probably the most physically gifted corner on the roster already. And you could say, well, I don't have very good corners, like whoop-de-doo. But like, he's a great athlete. And he's had a lot of ball production. So I view Jack Jones as an appropriate level risk through the lens of he's on a 1-year prove-it deal. Now, a guy who's had some questionable decision-making coming to Miami, it's fair to ask the question, but I look at it through the lens of if I'm the Dolphins, the way that my messaging to him, not saying it's going to work, but my messaging to Jack Jones is you've never got a multi-year contract that wasn't a rookie contract, right? Like this was supposed to be 22, 23, 24, 25. This was supposed to be the 4th year and final year of his rookie contract, but he got cut by the Raiders with the new regime that came in with Pete Carroll and so-and-so. Play here, ball out. You will have an opportunity to get that big contract, but you have to stay on the straight and narrow here. You have to be focused. You have to be dialed in and see how it goes. And if it goes nuclear, I would assume based on being a late July signing, there's probably not a lot of guarantees. Maybe there's no guarantees like the Darren Waller contract. And it's you could cut ties if it's not going to work out. No questions asked. And one of the other young guys steps up. We'll see. Then you have Kader Kohou, who obviously was having a good camp, I thought, from the practices that I was able to observe this week. Very unfortunate to have an injury and go down. I am a little leery that the rapid succession of Mike Hilton perhaps is a bad omen for Kader, but also it's one of those things, wait and see. Justin Fields got carted off, and Justin Fields had a dislocated toe and was practicing the next day. Right? And if Kader ends up missing a significant amount of time, we'll react to that news when it comes. But I've really enjoyed Kader's approach this year. I think he's properly motivated. He's another guy in a contract year, and a young guy who also never got a multi-year contract. If you told me that you had Kader Kohou, who's not suffered a significant injury, and it's Kader Kohou, now Mike Hilton coming in to be presumably the nickel, and Jack Jones on the other side, I feel a lot more comfortable about the secondary. Now we need more answers from Kader Kohou. Let's talk about Mike Hilton, who is just now signing after today's practice for Miami. Very instinctive player. Very good nickel player. I don't think he has the ideal levels of inside-outside flexibility that you would probably look for. And he's a guy that's more towards the downturn of his career. I don't think there's any question on that front. But Mike Hilton, during his time in Cincinnati, was consistently available. You know, he's only missed 4 games since the 2020 start of the 2021 season. He's been a guy who can fit the run and tackles well. He's played the last 4 seasons, 803, 701, 878, and 739 as far as actual snaps. He's 31 years old, so you acknowledge it is a late-stage player. He got his career started in Pittsburgh. And his best years was probably the end of Pittsburgh through the first 2 seasons in Cincinnati, when Cincinnati was very highly competitive. And now Cincinnati's defense the last few years has regressed. And a guy who doesn't have inside-outside capability, as a result, your market's going to be down a little bit. So I don't think this alleviates your questions of players playing outside, but it does give you, I think, between Minkah and Ife Melifonwu and potentially Kader Kohou, hopefully Kader Kohou, and Mike Hilton, and you have a lot of guys that can kind of play inside, and this is one of the guys that I'm not concerned about. Hey, if we're going to run zone match where I'm the nickel defender, and depending on what the receiver in front of me does, the second eligible, if he breaks out, it's one coverage. If he goes vertical, it's another coverage. If he goes shallow and away, it's a completely different coverage, right? And everybody's got to see it all the same way. And that's how a lot of the zone match stuff works. If you get into some of that world, This is the kind of guy that I think you feel good about making the right decisions based on the body of work that he's had as a very successful player. And he's been durable. Now he's an older player, and there's risk there, and we don't know the financials and all that stuff. But that's what I can give you on Mike Hilton right now. Want to get into some of the standouts. Obviously, we did not have a show yesterday. Ended up being a busier day than I thought I was going to have. So we're going to get into some of the standouts the last couple of days, first week as a whole. That's next here on Locked On Dolphins, including standouts from today. That's next. Stick with us here on Locked On Dolphins. Have you ever decided last minute to head to a ball game with family or friends? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be parked in the stands. It's exactly where Game Time comes in. It is the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you could splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come out to the ballpark with you. Game Time makes it all possible, and they make buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the lower you get the first pitch. And they have incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and the lowest price guarantee that takes all of the worry out of buying tickets. I love the panoramic seat views, so there's no guesswork as far as like, am I going to be able to see? Is it too far? Is it too close? Love it for football games for that perspective. Get that all 22 coaches film view. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. For $20 off, download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets for the lowest prices, guaranteed. I am now very scared to keep checking my timeline to make sure there's no there's no new developments as we are recording the show. But as far as standouts the last couple of days, I thought offensively, you had a couple of explosive plays from Jaylen Waddle. You had an explosive play from Tyreek Hill at today's practice where it was a longer developing route to a back off the top of the drop, kind of steps up into the pocket, has his eyes downfield. It's kind of a tight pocket, but I do think, in a live game setting, he would have had the opportunity to get the ball out. And the far safety was not able to get back far enough, and Tua put it out over the top in front for Tyreek to run from the far side of the field underneath of it and ran in for a touchdown. So it was the most exciting play of the day. The defense had some exciting plays. Today's practice, most competitive of the practices thus far this week, and you could definitely tell the fans being there kind of gassed these guys up a little bit after what was kind of I would say flat. It's not fair to say flat, but it's very meat and potatoes, very busy, but very technical and competitive, right? They got after it. You saw guys flying off the ball, and you saw guys with really heavy hands using their hands. But this Saturday practice was the defense kind of flexes early. Minkah Fitzpatrick and the social media team already has a clip out on it. Running over the top, taking the best angle to the football in a crowd of like 4 or 5 bodies. And he does the full extension catch and got everybody gassed up. And then rookie Jason Marshall makes a great play from the inside leverage on the hip pocket on what was attempted to be a back shoulder throw. So he makes a play on the ball. More on Minkah Fitzpatrick here in a few minutes. So these performances early, plus the defensive line, very physical, and they were doing a really nice job, whether it was what you would perceive to be who you assume the starters are going to look like or otherwise in the first half of practice. And then the Dolphins offense settled in. You could see there was a lot of pressure reps where they were showing extra pressure on the line of scrimmage. And some of the players were asked about it after the practice, and they said, yeah, they're going to get us sometimes, but, we had to be able to get up to the line of scrimmage and identify pressure, and sometimes they disguised it well, but then as it went, we kind of processed and executed and had to throw hot and took completions underneath, and then they became a much more efficient operation offensively as the practice wore on, and then had a couple of explosive plays and efficient navigating of pressure looks throughout the practice. Willie Gay has stood out all week. Big-time standout performance again today, and in coverage and pressuring off the edge. Now, that was the concern with how New Orleans used him, was they just put him up on the end of the line of scrimmage and said, hey, go rush a passer. And that's not really Willie Gay's game. But he's been in a lot of places. He's been very active and had himself a batted ball on one of those hot throw opportunities where he gets up and elevates and knocks it down. He has another near interception where he's buzzing out into the flat on an outbreaking route and nearly jumps the throw by Zach Wilson, who put the ball in the perfect spot. Zach Wilson threw the skin off the ball today. He had a great day. He showed the fastball. He had a couple layered corner routes. He took a shot down the field that was incomplete, but put in the right location if there was going to be a ball adjustment to make the catch. Looked good. Zach Wilson looked good. I think it was Zach Wilson's best collection of throws of the week for Zach. So I thought Zach ended on a high note. Tyreek Hill, obviously, was nice to see the explosive play. But I'll tell you who popped a few times today on my eyes. Jack Jones. The transitional quickness, the hips, the opportunity to get up in guys' face and play some press. That was all very apparent very quickly in watching Jack Jones operate and cover and execute. And I think it was a nice blend. Devon Achane had a couple of chunk runs that were really nice chunk runs. One was kind of, I don't want to get too far into it, but it was speed to the perimeter where he got outside the outside guy, and then he got outside the safety running the alley, and then he gets up the sideline and chunks what would have been a big-time play. So healthy blend of guys on either side of the ball when you're taking the tally on winners or risers or standouts or stars or however you want to classify it. I think they had a pretty healthy blend to finish the week. And for what was a healthy competitive practice with wins on both sides. Now, Minkah did have standout play. Minkah also, there's some news that came out this morning about Minkah and his intentions. We're going to get into that next. Here on Locked on Dolphins, make sure you guys stick with us. Fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chat, get your draft board ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, Locked on Dolphins is playing Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your 1 millionth league. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. It all begins on August 4th, so stay tuned and get started by creating and joining a Yahoo Fantasy League at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. That's yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl, and let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. Minkah Fitzpatrick, according to, I believe it was Omar Kelly had it first, and then it was, I believe, Marcel Louis-Jacques who confirmed it. And Minkah has hired Drew Rosenhaus as his new representation. And I don't know that that's why Minkah Fitzpatrick hasn't spoken to the media or anything like that. But it certainly does indicate that Minkah Fitzpatrick would like to have some long-term stability with a contract that has no guaranteed money left. And I think the Dolphins have a chance to kind of approach this in a few different ways. I think you have an interesting opportunity to try to put up some new boundaries with a new face. I don't know exactly how that would look, but I do know, I go back to Stephon Diggs getting traded from Buffalo to Houston last year. And obviously didn't work out. Stephon Diggs got hurt. But Stephon Diggs got traded from Buffalo to Houston, and they elected to cut off the rest of the deal and gave him lump sum upfront, large amount of guaranteed money, and said, play it out. And if you want to bet on yourself and think that you can go get a really nice next big contract, that's fine, but we'll guarantee your salary this year. And They cut like 3 years off the back end of the deal. Now, Minkah doesn't have 3 years on the back end of his deal. So he's 25 and 26. So I think one way the Dolphins could maybe try to navigate this and say, we understand you want stability. We will guarantee your salary this year. We can give it to you up front. That gives us salary cap space. But we will eliminate the last year on your deal if the Dolphins don't want to do multiple years of guarantees because they don't know what direction the team is going. You could also, in theory, give Minkah Fitzpatrick a multi-year contract. But you're kind of falling into the same trap that you just got you in this mess in the first place. Like, I don't know. I don't know how eager I would be to do that if I were the Dolphins. But I do think there's merit to the idea of, and to be totally fair to both Minkah Fitzpatrick and Zach Sealer, these guys have been participants all week in every capacity. They've been engaged. They've been leading their position rooms. They've been mentoring guys. We just heard from Zach Sealer, yesterday, and was the quintessential exactly how you would want a player to handle a press conference, and said, this is what's important to me, and this is how I'm going to choose to handle it. And yes, I think the respect that I've earned is coming. I think the challenge for Minkah is last time you were here, you got traded out. And that was a long time ago. And now you're back for the first time, and you've taken some reps at training camp. You made a great play today. But does that merit multi-year guarantees? And I think the fact that I don't think it's a coincidence that he signed with Drew, because Drew Rosenhaus and the Dolphins play well in the sandbox together. They work together on a lot of these things. Spoiler alert, Mike Hilton, who do you think his agent is? I'll give you one guess. It's Drew Rosenhaus. So I don't think it's a coincidence that Minkah went to the rep that has the best working relationship with the Dolphins. And I know there's a lot of fans who see the things that end up as wins for Drew and his players, and they're not a fan. And I get that element of, an agent is looking out not for the team, but he's looking out for the best interest of his clients. And it creates this awkward balance. But I would 10 times out of 10 rather work with an agent who is willing to play ball and makes concessions and offers alternative solutions when it's not going to work out with one of your clients, and has a healthy relationship and is present. I saw Drew this past week. Felt like every day down at the facility. I would much rather have that than have somebody who is totally cutthroat and gets wins for their players, and I respect it. But I think the best working relationships do have some give and take. So we'll see what comes out of this development for Minkah Fitzpatrick. But the Dolphins, at this stage, a couple of reinforcements for the secondary, and they kind of flirted around with it. Rasul Douglas, and here's the other side of this coin. I think it was Josina Anderson reported that Rasul Douglas told the Dolphins that he was moving on from the Dolphins offer. Okay. Maybe this is less about Kader Kohou and more about the budget that you had for Rasul Douglas potentially being open. And now you can get, under the same budget, a nickel exclusive older player in Mike Hilton and a player who has some questions as far as how long-term you want to be committed to him in Jack Jones. Maybe that's the price difference of Jack Jones and Mike Hilton versus Rasul Douglas. So this doesn't have to be a big-time omen thing for Kader Kohou, but Kader Kohou nonetheless, we're on watch and keeping the eyes on the timeline, see what comes up. That's going to do it for us here today on this episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day. Appreciate you guys, as always, for checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. I'll be back to talk to you all again soon. Fins up. Go Dolphins.